From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in Northamptonshire, the county I grew up in, and just beyond the camera, looking into it here, I can see some lovely green fields, so surrounded by greenery, which is lovely. And it is the start of the Men's County Championship. The domestic season gets underway today, so good luck to everybody involved in that over the course of this week and this weekend. And since the last show, I stayed up all night to broadcast the final of the Women's World Cup. I was just pleased to show that even at my age, I can still pull an all-nighter. But it was a brilliant match, astounding for Australia, and we will talk more about that in the show.
Ali and Charu, Jim Maxwell here in Sydney, and we've already had the annual rainfall within the first week of April. That's how wet it is. It is serious Armageddon, floods everywhere, and some people have been flooded for the second, third or fourth time. It really is an awful situation for them. But for those that live in these parts, the cricket season's over. We're watching it on TV or listening on the radio in other parts. And I think it's the IPL now that we've moved on to, with Pat Cummins hitting an amazing half-century in the IPL. What about that, folks?
Is he a batsman? Is he a bowler? Is he a Superman? What? Hello, everybody. Alison, Jim, I'm really happy to be back after spending a few weeks traipsing around Middle India. Lots of ancient forts and temples, and of course the tiger safari, saw quite a few. And then I went to Jaipur for the board meeting of a major hospital run by a friend of mine, Yogi Jain, then back to Mayo, my school, Mayo College in Ajmer, because there's a building coming up in the memory of my father. And now I'm in my hill home in the Himalayas. It's beautiful here. Jim, I do feel sorry for your floods, and Alison, I suppose you're okay with the greenery, but great to be back on the show. And of course, by the way, yes, there is an IPL going on. I've kept a quarter eye on it in these early stages.
Yeah, the cricket never stops, does it? And I love greenery, Cherry, but I love mountains even more. So sometime we'll descend on you in the Himalayas and we'll do a Stumped Outside podcast from there. I'm getting on to the producers about it. Like I mentioned, the Women's World Cup final, I said a brilliant match. I mean, it became, in a sense, felt one-sided quite quickly because of an outstanding performance from one individual and a couple of dropped catches as well from England. But Australia were crowned world champions for the 7th time. They finished the tournament with a perfect record of 9 wins from 9 matches, and they really won it in style. Yes, Australia beat England by 71 runs, largely thanks to Alyssa Healy's sensational 170 off 138 balls, one of the great ODI innings of all time. And yes, she was dropped on 41, but an innings of superlative quality on the back of her century in the semi-final as well. And she was toying with England at times. We saw the inside-out cover drives, the sweeps, the scoops as well. And she accelerated. She saw off that early bowling and just really dominated. And Jim, on the team itself, though, I mean, we're running out of superlatives to describe this Australian side, aren't we?
Yes, they've maintained a very high standard. They haven't slipped. They haven't had that bad game that everyone thought they might have somewhere along the line, and hopefully it wasn't going to be in a semi-final or a final. They were in a prodigiously confident form. And Heather Knight, she must have been umming and ahhing a bit after winning the toss. Might have been better to bat, but would it have made any difference? I mean, Nat Sipper was brilliant in the reply, but there's too many to chase. And Australia's domination with the bat, the ball, and, as we've mentioned a number of times, in the field. Their fielding was at another level, like everything else, just magnificent. And the Laureus Awards will be very interesting later on in the year, because if that women's team is not one of the best teams in the world, I'll be very surprised.
I know, you do wonder sometimes whether cricket slips off the radar of Laureus somehow, because it's not, say, the global sport in the way that football is, or even the reach of an Olympic sport. But Charu, I mean, Healy, yeah, she played with that patience for the first, through that power play, nothing sort of impetuous to try and go hard out. She and Rachel Haynes just saw off the quality opening bowling and then really flourished. England were undone by a superlative individual performance when you look at it like that. And overall, the case of the best team won.
Undeniably. I mean, here on Stumps too, we might have our differences every once in a while in terms of opinion, but I don't think anyone here thought that Australia was not going to win the World Cup. They were the firm favourites, and of course, they did deliver in spectacular style. But we talk about one individual, and of course, Alyssa played a magnificent innings, and she loves throwing bowlers off their length because she keeps rushing and charging and doing all sorts of fabulous things at the crease, and that can be really disconcerting for even the best bowlers in the world. Now, you talk about that drop at 40, but Australia were far too strong, and England did well enough to get to the final after the kind of start they had, Alison. You know, you would imagine they wouldn't even make it to the knockouts, but they did extremely well, no doubt. And may I add, if you don't mind, a little touch of pathos about the Indian team losing very narrowly to South Africa. I watched that match and it was just heartbreaking. But who knows? They may have given Australia a tough fight. But yeah, the best team won. No question about it.
Yeah, I mean, Nat Siver certainly just kept a degree of interest going because it felt with that record, you know, the chase that was set, that it could just be an extremely one-sided run chase. But, you know, back-to-back centuries for her against Australia, one in the group stage and, of course, now in the final, underlines her absolute star quality. But in terms of the dominance, Jim, does this just go back to the fact that Australia have been professional domestically for longer than anybody else and longer than England even?
Yeah, they've had a surfeit of talent, not just a number of talented players. There's so much depth, and they keep winning. I mean, it's a bit of a cliche to say that winning becomes a habit, but when you win like this Australian side, you do bring a level of confidence and assurance to every match you play. So that's why it did surprise me that Heather Knight sent them in, but she had her reasons, no doubt. It didn't work out, and I'm not sure where this Australian team, in a match that they're going to be up for, can lose. Not for a while anyway. This was a mighty, mighty performance by a magnificent team, and it's the high watermark of Australian cricket at the moment, you'd have to say, is the domination, the performance of the women's team. The men are going all right in various moods, but the women is just brilliant.
Well, now to the Indian Premier League, where Rajasthan Royals have got off to a near-perfect start with 2 wins from their opening 3 matches. Now, the reach of the Royals franchise extends far beyond India, with a presence in Abu Dhabi and London in the shape of Royals academies. So one in a major centre of the Middle East and one in the capital of the UK. And now a second in the UK, but in the Cornish seaside town of Truro. Now, Cornwall's very close to my heart. I actually lived there for 9 months in Falmouth. It's where I trained as a journalist. I reported on my first ever cricket match down there as well, which was St Berrien versus Callington in the Cornwall Premier League. No first-class cricket there, no 100-team base there, certainly no international cricket goes to Cornwall. So why has an IPL franchise based an academy there? Let's find out more with the academy's head coach, Sean Hooper. Sean, welcome to Stumps. I mean, just tell us then, why has an IPL franchise gone to Cornwall?
Good morning, Alison. Good morning, Jim. Good morning, Cherry. It must be nice to have the 4 great cricketing powers in the world, England, Australia, India and Cornwall represented today.
Exactly. Well, this intrigues me, you see, because I reported on the Cornwall Premier League. Of course, Cornwall is not a first-class county, so the club level and the minor counties level. What has led to an IPL franchise deciding to base an academy in St Austell?
About 17 years ago, I left teaching to watch my youngest daughter grow up, and yesterday was a big day. It was her last day of formal schooling before A-level exams, and so as part of not knowing what I was going to do in life, Ali, I set up a cricket business, and in 2007, I took a group of youngsters from Truro across to Mumbai, and we stayed at CCI, with Brabourne Stadium, where some of the IPL games are being played. Fantastically hosted by World Cricket Academy, which was Zubin Brooke and Sachin Bajaj's company, 2 great guys. And I made great friends with the 2 head coaches, Monty Desai, who's currently head coach of West Indies, and Umesh Patwal, who's been head coach of Afghanistan, Nepal, whatever. They became great friends. Umesh came and spent a summer with me in 2007 and developed his coaching in Cornwall. Monty, I mentored him through his level 3 ECB course, and we've just kept cricketing contacts going. As you rightly pointed out, Cornwall's not your natural cricket mecca, but it is a fantastic place to do a university course or to develop.
So tell us a little bit more about the actual setup at Truro School and how it will work.
Basically, Monty and I had conversations. We developed things over a couple of year periods. So we're trying to run an academy which is slightly different to the ones in Abu Dhabi and Reed School in London. Cornwall is a very, very poor area, as you're probably aware from your time here. It looks amazing when you see all the coastal pictures and everything going on. But 2 miles from where I live is the highest index of mass deprivation in Europe. There's a lot of poverty in the middle of Cornwall, where the mining industries no longer exist. So my great passion is to try and make sure that Cornish youngsters have opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise get. They need some hope, they need some aspiration. And in conversation with Monty, we've basically somehow become a fantastic friend or part of the Rajasthan Royals Academy.
Jim Maxwell here, Sean, just trying to get a bit more of a handle on this relationship with the Rajasthan Royals and where it leads to.
Yeah, Jim, the absolute dream for me would be that a child that has never played cricket before in Cornwall hooks up to a Rajasthan Royals program, goes through a program and ends up playing for England and Rajasthan Royals in the IPL. That's the absolute dream. And realistically, we run good coaching programs in Cornwall, and we have done for many years before the Royals came along, but linking in with them, giving our children some stardust, some hope, a little bit of aspiration that there might be a route for them. That's where it really benefits us down in Cornwall. For instance, I had a 7-year-old, he was actually 6 years old, in our under-7 program on Sunday morning, came to me and said, Sean, Joss Butler scored 100 for the Rajasthan Royals yesterday. And that's, that brand awareness, brand identity, to get a 6-year-old that fascinated by the IPL was fantastic for us to see. And the child was so excited.
Sean, it's been great to hear the story of Rajasthan Royals in Cornwall, of all places.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us on Stumped. Good luck with it all.
Absolute pleasure, Ellie. Cheers now.
Finally, on Stumped, the squads for the UK's 100 competition are falling into place. This was the new 100-ball format that launched in England last summer. Its build-up was full of controversy, you'll remember, and discontent over the impact that it could have on the longer formats of the game, and maybe that's yet to take full effect, having so much focus on white ball cricket in the height of England's very short summer. Certainly the Test team at the moment is not having a good time of it. But the competition, once it started, drew huge crowds, as well as new free-to-air cricket coverage, particularly elevating the women's game. Now, in the men's competition for this second season, a draft was held to fill the squads, with West Indies big hitter Karen Pollard selected by London Spirit, with the first overall pick for around $160,000. The other star names in the top price bracket were Andre Russell, who's been signed by Manchester Originals, and Rashid Khan, who's been retained by Trent Rockets. Now, there wasn't a draft in the women's competition. They were able to retain an unlimited number of players from their 2021 squads, and those who were released were free to be signed elsewhere. Now, I've already chatted quite a bit about Australia, but those Australian names were being referred to as the superstars of the 100 for this season. And of course, World Cup winning captain Meg Lanning is featuring. She'll play for Trent Rockets. Alyssa Healy will be playing for Northern Superchargers. And England opener Tammy Beaumont is going to get a chance of captaining as she's moved to Welsh Fire. But in all, 19 of the 22 players who featured in the World Cup final between Australia and England are going to be in the 100's second season. Now, Jim, last year, because of COVID, the Australian players, men's or women's, couldn't play in the 100. Do you think the tournament can measure its sort of success and early reputation by the fact that so many, have opted and have been keen to be involved now?
Well, it's not quite the IPL, is it, in terms of star players? So until it becomes that, it's got a lot of work to do. I actually think longer term, the women's 100 will probably work, but the men don't need it. I'm sorry, it's not necessary. You've got enough cricket going on in England. You don't need men to be playing. If you're going to seriously concentrate on getting the Test team back somewhere, how many white ball competitions do you need around the time of the year that they're playing? I know it's allegedly drawing more people to the game and so on, and it is on free to wear at times, and perhaps that's a bonus. So look, I won't go too hard on it at this stage, but like the BBL, as we've seen in Australia, if you don't have the best players every season, you're in trouble.
It's certainly providing a big payday for some lower level domestic players, giving them that opportunity. But Charo, in terms of those big names, that Jim was saying aren't there, there's no David Warner, there's no Chris Gayle, no Babar Azam. They're pretty clear to see that some teams may be deliberately steering away from spending their money on marquee overseas players and deciding to stick with domestic players who actually can guarantee their availability. And I guess in a way, that's a tactical move by some.
Well, let's not underestimate the intelligence of those who run these tournaments or those who run the teams. It is a very clever mix of who is available, who is a global star, what do we need for the marketing of our team, and also, the affordability. I mean, there's a price to everything. So there are T20 stars, and I think they're slightly different from otherwise global cricketing stars. You mentioned a couple of names, and even in the IPL, which is the big daddies, some of these really big global stars who are perhaps the best cricketers in the world, of course, Pakistan doesn't make it on other grounds, are not a part of the IPL. So individuals are getting different kinds of reputation, and maybe England, and I will not fault England, are thinking about the future of the game itself, because they need more support domestically, more visibility, more spectators, more viewership. And if they feel they can go there and get there through white ball cricket, well, that's just where the game is evolving towards. So I'll have to bow down to the wisdom of those who planned the 100. Obviously, England needed this kind of attention on cricket, which it wasn't quite getting. So something will have to give for something else to grow. And it looks like white ball is the way forward for England as well, perhaps the rest of the world too. So there are enough stars. You're not going to impress anyone with the money. That $160,000 is kind of, loose change in the IPL. But, and Jim's right on one count, that if you don't have the best in the world, it will never rise to that kind of height in terms of the men's 100. But the women's 100 could set new standards, and they have players for whatever's worth from India as well, unlike the men's 100. So there is a true mix of the very best in the women's 100, unlike the men's 100.
Well, that's all we've got time for on Stumped this week on All India Radio. Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter. We're at BBCWS Sport. Use the hashtag BBC Stumped. And of course, go to the BBC World Service's YouTube channel to watch the show as well. My thanks to Charo Sharma and Jim Maxwell, and to you all. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.